All right, boys and girls, welcome back. Sam's Army episode 2.264. We got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to start out with headlines where we'll talk VAR, games abroad, and Barcelona nonsense. Premier League, we're going to put a bow on the 2023-24 season that was. Then around the world, MLS musings, U.S. men's national team pre-Copa roster reveal, and the really quick championship playoff preview. And then, of course, stoppage time with Ivan Toney's best bets and everyone's favorite segment, GOAWs. But now, time to welcome in this week's extra special, many-time returning beauty, Alex Bono. Really needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. Alex Bono of DC United, who is fresh off the links. How'd you swing him today, big man?
Yeah, we glad to be back as always. It doesn't happen as often as I know we both would like it to, but always special to be back on here and talk some shit with you. We hit them often, but we hit just enough shots to keep you coming back for more, and I think that's what golf is really about. So you always go out the first day after a major, like after you watch a major on TV, you always go out and you just, you sink that putt like you just won the PGA championship, even though you're not even close.
Even though it was a 7 on the second.
Yeah. The ones for double bogey always go in. That's what you don't understand.
It's true. So true. And the one for birdies, I usually do another one after that. They still don't.
That's right.
By the way, you're being way humble. I know you guys are actually pretty good golfers, and you played in the tournament and you got second out of 20-something teams. So you're being a little humble there. That's okay. That's okay. We allow
call that a sandbagger in the golf industry.
That's true. It's true. You sandbag with the best of them. Actually, quick, more birdies or beers today?
Birdies, group birdies. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. It was a scramble. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Now your real actual intro question this week. You guys just played Messi. You just played Miami. What's the game? Just walk me through like what the coach says in the sort of the pregame, game planning for a team that has Messi on it. Is it just like, okay, 3 guys, just follow them around? Is it like, listen, you're just gonna get cooked a lot, and just it's okay. I'm not gonna judge you for that. To be fair, you guys actually did pretty well. Yeah, you almost held them scoreless. I think you lost 1-0 in like a last minute goal. So you did pretty well. But what's the game? What does the coach actually talk about when it comes to Messi?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to go about it when you're playing big name players. I'll just loop a lot of them, and there have been a lot over the years in MLS. But right now, there's one front and center, and we all know who that is. And so you can either tiptoe around that fact and try and treat it like it's any other game, and you can try and game plan like you're playing any other attacking midfielder or winger or striker in the league, or you can address the elephant in the room, and which we did long before the game, so we could air out everything. A lot of guys kind of said their piece on guys that have played in big games on big stages that have said, this is how I like to deal with it. And we kind of had a group discussion about it, just to kind of take that elephant in the room, take that that special factor of the game and try and suppress that a little bit. And once we got past that, it was much more focused on a game plan for us for facing Miami as a group. But at the same time, when you go and play in Miami, it's even more different than when you play them at home, just because of the circus that is a game at, Chase Stadium or whatever their sponsor for that stadium is right now, because the light shows before the games and the fireworks and the fans and the chanting, and they play a little samba music before kickoff and everyone's dancing. And it really is, it's a circus in a fun way. And it really is a fun atmosphere to play in front of. And it's special. I know a lot of the guys, in hindsight, you look back and those are the kind of games that you want to play in against the competition that you really want to measure yourself against. And I think for a long stretch of the game, we kept them really under wraps. And unfortunately, a lapse late in the game cost us. And that's kind of a hump that we're trying to get over as a group right now.
So quick on that, this is the second time you played him. You've actually played Inter Miami twice. You played him at DC earlier, and then you played in Miami, as you said, this week. What was the difference in the game plan? because it worked.
Yeah, I think we kind of allowed them to have more possession of the ball and sat back a little bit. And then once the ball, inevitably, they try to get the ball to Messi or into Suarez. Once that ball kind of comes into us, we did a really good job of collapsing like that, like for basketball people, like a zone where the ball goes into the zone and then everyone collapses on the middle of the zone. And so we did a really good job when the ball did get between us, 3-4 guys hawking to the ball and trying to to win tackles, and then we were able to get out in transition. And in all fairness, we had a few really big chances to go up a goal, and then a couple late to try and find an equalizer, and it just didn't happen for us on the day.
1-0 loss to the would you call them, in fact we're actually going to get into this, so I'm teasing it, are they the best team in MLS
right now? Yeah, but I've got some thoughts.
Okay, we'll get there. Gotta say you teased my teased. Well done. Yeah. Well done. All right, let's head to headlines. So the Premier League is going to vote on a proposal from Wolves. I would have thought this was actually going to come from Nottingham Forest. Came from Wolves, a proposal to scrap VAR and just sort of go back to the Stone Ages and say, you know what, refs, just have at it. Mess up at your, as much as you can, or well, as much as you will. What are your thoughts on, is it even possible to go back to a world where we don't use VAR?
I don't think so. I think the furthest extent would be to limit it. Some decisions would not be able to go to video review, which some aren't now. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's not the process of, it's not VAR as an idea that's broken. It's what happens in the process of it. Like, so for example, in the Premier League, what they do that's different from MLS is when they're doing an offsides call, they have the technology to draw the lines, and you see guys that are half an inch offsides or whatever. And so we might feel like as fans, that's kind of stupid and it kind of ruins the moment of the game. But this is something that people asked for in the first place, right? Like, you need to be able to review big plays that can change matches. And by the rules of the game, that is an offsides. That is a red card or a penalty. And so we asked for this in the first place because we thought that referees were making too many mistakes that altered the results of games. Now we want to reel it back to get some of that natural feel into the game. I think it's too far gone. I'm a believer and a fan of VAR when it's used properly. And there are numerous instances where it's still not used properly, and where with all of the replay that we have available, there aren't checks, or the checks aren't thorough enough, or the referee isn't being able to see that look that the people in the booth are seeing. And so I think it's still a long way to go until it's a perfect system, and it might never, ever be a perfect system. But I do think it's good for the game, and I don't think that they should scrap it just because this is what fans wanted in the first place.
Fair. Now, to be clear, because I got a lot of comments on the post on Instagram about this, we're not talking about goal line technology. That's not going anywhere. Like that's here to stay. This is different from VAR. I've said my piece on this a million times, so I'm not going to go over it again. But I just feel like for subjective calls, we're talking handball, talking fouls, I know that they do, correct some wrongs. Like there's no question about that. In my mind, it's not worth the juice is not worth the squeeze in terms of the loss of flow, the sort of, you're always like, anytime a goal goes in, which is the best thing about soccer and it's sort of the best thing in sports because it happens so infrequently. Now it's like, was it a goal? Like, is there a flag up? Are we then going to go back and look for a foul? It's just like, I hate that. And I think that VAR, yes, they do correct some wrongs, but there's too much just basically adding a layer of human fuckery. For sure.
I think to, being in the game firsthand, every preseason we have a meeting with the referees. And the one thing they say to us, and I know that a lot of fans know about it as well, the subjective calls are supposed to be clear and obvious errors. That is the whole reason of why they brought in VAR in the first place. They're not trying to change little tacky fouls at midfield that lead to goals, right? And it's gotten to a point for some reason that we're looking back, 10 10, 15
entire
passes,
possession.
30
Yeah.
seconds after a different possession that might alter this play. And I think that for me, when it comes to VAR, it should be rules of the game that are black and white, offsides, goal line technology, right? Like
Yep.
these are black and white. You know, in MLS, we don't have goal line. We don't use goal line technology at the moment because we have VAR, but we don't have the camera angles to look straight down the goal line. And so you're looking at, you know, a camera angle from midfield or.
And there's been some controversies
and there
about
has been some controversies just this year.
Yeah.
So for me, technology is good for the game, but technology shouldn't be something that takes away from subjective calls. If it's clear and it's obvious, or if it's black and white, like the offside thing is when you're a half an inch offside, technically by the rules of the game, you're offsides. And if he's 3 yards offside or an inch offside, you're still offside. And so I think it's hard to reel back on things like that are black and white. But I do agree that when it comes to subjective calls, when it comes to penalties, when it comes to fouls, it should only be when it's clear and obvious. If someone takes an obvious dive and the referee calls a penalty, then that should be something that can be reviewed. If there's contact and it's not an egregious foul and the referee says play on, for me, those are things that should remain the referee's on-field decision.
Fair enough. And then it always gets down to what's clear and obvious. And, you know,
Yep.
the lines always, the gray areas always come to the fore. Anyway, another talking point that's been on the radar for quite a while here, but I actually like to get your thoughts on this. So FIFA formed a working committee to explore playing domestic games abroad. And so this has been, you know, the La Liga has been talking about playing games in the US for years. In fact, I think that's what actually started the whole litigation process that got us to where we are right now. It sounds like, you know, when they form a working party, AKA it's happening, right? They're going to play games abroad. So for an MLS player like you, what are your thoughts in, say, November?
Yeah, I think that for me, one of the biggest factors in it is how the size of the teams that are going to be coming. And if you have a Getafe and Villarreal game coming to Philadelphia and they don't sell out, you know, the Union Stadium, what's that going to look like at the same time, right? Like, obviously we've seen the off-season tours that these teams do and they're selling out Michigan's football stadium, but Real Madrid is playing, you know, AC Milan or whatever. They're massive clubs that have worldwide brand recognition and fans that are in this country. And so it's kind of a weird balance. Like, you can't take El Clasico and put it in the States, right? Or can you? For me, part of it is taking away of the passion of the Spanish fans on their domestic land in those cities that are paying real working money to go and watch their teams play. And you're taking away a game out of their life that they die for. And you're going to try and put it in the States where there's going to be maybe casual fans from the city, maybe traveling fans who are big fans of that specific team. But if the game's not big enough, you're going to struggle to kind of fill out a stadium anyways. I think from an MLS perspective, I think that our fans are our fans. They're pretty passionate. The casuals that are in our cities come when they want to, and they don't come when they don't want to. But I don't think that's because they're huge soccer fans and would rather watch a mid-table La Liga game. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but for me, my standpoint is I'm not really sure what they have to gain. But if they want to come and they're going to play a game on a Sunday in Dallas or Orlando, cool. But I don't think that it really changes much of an MLS perspective.
Yeah. So my first thought was like, oh, this could be good for growing the game, because I'm always sort of optimistic about anything like this. Mm-hmm. This could be good for sort of growing the game. But then when you really think about it, nah, that's not what this is about. And obviously, I knew that's not what it was about, but right. It was about money, right? That's what it's about. And these teams want to raise their profile. And when I say Villarreal and Getafe, let's be serious. They probably are going to have at least one team that is going to be.
Has to be. Right. You would think that it has to be one team where people would travel to watch this team play an in-season game. People travel to watch them play their postseason tours. But again, you're seeing two massive clubs from different leagues that are filling out a football stadium. I think it's great. You know, I've been to a few of them. There was a couple up in Toronto when I was there, when they do their tours. And I think they're great. And it does bring a lot of people. Culturally, it brings a lot of people. I went to, I think it was a Benfica maybe. And, you know, the category of fans that are really into Benfica, that share a nationality, they're at the game and they love it, even if they're not Benfica fans. But for me to play an in-season La Liga game or an in-season Bundesliga game, you have to have a team that has a big enough profile that they could probably sell out the stadium on their own, or else it might not happen.
In which case it'd be a tough look. They probably wouldn't want to do that.
Right. I mean, imagine you get even, Villarreal and I don't know, give me someone who's in the top half of that table. That's not one of the biggest teams. Like
Sevilla
outside
Real
of
Betis
Barca,
or
Sevilla. Like realistically, how many people do you think are coming to a game if they put that in Orlando? Like, are they selling out Orlando Stadium? Maybe, probably. It's not a guarantee, I don't think.
It'd be interesting. I don't know. I've sort of vacillated on this one, and now I've gone towards the I'm out on this, and even though I know it's happening, and so there's no point in being out on it. It's happening.
Maybe I don't have the business mind for it, but I don't see what the real financial benefit is, right? Like, just to put the game on, you're gonna have to pay all this money, and the teams are gonna have to get over here.
It's exposure. I think that's what it ends up being. Like,
you're banking on exposure, but then again,
team does, the league does, and so then if you go watch a team, then you maybe buy a t-shirt, and then you want to buy, watch the game on TV when they play. So I think that's probably what listen, I don't have a brain for business either. Your brain is definitely better than mine. Nobody's got a worse brain for business than me. And we'll stick with La Liga here quickly on the last headline. Barca, this team. Oh, Barcelona. So the latest, and remember, so Xavi was, as of a month ago, he pulled a U-turn, and he's like, I'm going to stay. I'm going to fulfill my contract. I'm going to stay till the end of 2025 or whenever that's up. Well, 3 weeks later, or maybe a month, it's all out the window. Reportedly, this is all reportedly, he may just be essentially let go by Barcelona, which just craziness. I mean, I think my personal feeling is that he's a pretty good manager. He came into a situation that was really tough. He's a club legend, so you would think he'd get a little extra sort of leash. For me, this sort of is just another, example of Barcelona, their board, and just the way the structure is. It's just so dysfunctional. Like, why, if you were a coach, I mean, I see the reasons, and it comes down to a lot of money, and exposure. But like, why would you want to go coach Barcelona right now? It's just so hard. It's like United, like there's so much money there, so much exposure and sort of all that, but it's a no-win proposition. It's just a matter of not if, but when you get fired. If Xavi's going to get fired, your ass is going to get fired from Barcelona.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a club that's been in quite a bit of turmoil over the last couple of years, right? Just with the financial stuff, and then there were some rumblings earlier this season about the guys in the locker room and how they felt about Xavi and all that stuff. And so, you're right. It's not a club that it requires a certain type of manager. It requires a certain personality of a guy who's willing to come in and face all of the pressure and all of the expectations and all of the problems that club currently presents. And like you said, if you win, that's what Barcelona expects to happen. You're not the savior that's turned things around for this great club, right? Like, historically, it's one of the biggest clubs ever, right? And that's the facts. But right now, they are in turmoil. They do have a lot of issues financially. And so it's not a job that I can imagine is high up on high-end managers' radars. Like, I don't see a guy like Jurgen Klopp being like, oh, you know what? I really want to go to Barcelona right now.
Nobody. I mean, I was comparing it with the Manchester United job. Barcelona is actually higher because their expectations are a fair bit higher than United's at this point. United's expectations have kind of been beaten down a little bit over the years. Barcelona's, they're like, trophies or nothing. Trophies or send your ass packing.
That's right.
Just a weird situation. All right, we'll move on. We got to put a bow on this Premier League season. It was a season. It was a fun
A
one.
full season.
It was a full season.
Mhm.
No COVID in the middle. Manchester City were crowned champions. As you know, I don't know if everybody expected it. They certainly did at the beginning of the season, but then there's sort of the doldrums and everything, and Arsenal came up, and Liverpool was there for a minute, and as you know, they didn't quite finish the season the way they wanted to. But the final game came down to City versus West Ham, Arsenal versus Everton. There was no drama though. Really, there was the closest thing to drama we had was Kudus hitting the overhead goal, which was incredible. Shout out to him on West Ham to bring it, I think, to 2-1 at the time.
2-1, yeah.
And then Arsenal at the time were I think drawing for most of the game. Actually, I think they were losing for a minute there against Everton.
Yeah, they were.
And then they were drawing for most of the game, and then they came out with a last minute winner. But like City was already up 2 goals. It was just like there was no. This was, I think, in terms of like drama, the least dramatic final day
Mhm.
in my memory. I mean, because the relegation spots were all but mathematically sewn up. You had City that was in a great spot to win it. Arsenal like had an outside shot. Then top four was pretty much set. Like I think Spurs, the way that it went with City in the midweek, that
Right.
locked top four up. So it was like there was nothing really to play for other than obviously the 1-2.
Mhm.
Um, I got some talking points from the season that we can just run through real quick because like there's not much to talk about from that last week, really.
No.
Other than maybe, well, no, we'll get to Klopp and Liverpool in a minute. But the thing about City is, and I say this as somebody who was rooting for them and was relieved as all get out that they pulled it off, because if
Mhm.
Arsenal had won that, it would have been terrible for me personally. But City winning it is terrible, I would say, for the league itself. So they've now won 4 in a row. They've won 6 out of 7. And I think they won at least 1 or 2 earlier than that. So, like, this dominance that they're in, this dominant run that they're on, is bad for the league. What are your thoughts here? Is it bad for the league? Do you disagree with that? Is this different than, because this is the argument I hear from a lot of people. How is this different than the 90s and aughts when Manchester United was essentially running
Mhm.
everything? And
Mhm.
that's a very good point. I don't think that was good for the league either. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that the Premier League, world football in general, is different than what American sports fans are used to, right? Like we're used to the team that finishes last getting the first draft pick and having a chance to turn their entire organization around. And that's not the way that world football is set up. World football is set up for the team that typically spends the most money and does the best job recruiting players has the most success. And that's just the way that it is. And so I think it's unfair to complain about City constantly winning when they are consistently buying the best players and putting these players together in a team that, truly still has to go out and win these games. It's not like they're just walking out there and, right, like the gap was what, 2 points or 1 point. And so it's not as though they're running away with this by 30 points. That's a different discussion. But I don't think it's fair to say, well, because they're spending all this money, that they're this team that's cheating or whatever. Like if they're cheating, then deduct the points and make it so they don't win. Like that's the truth. They spend the money, they go out on the field, they win the games, and that's the way that world football is set up. And that's just the way it is. If we wanted to make it more, we want to put parity into it, have them play the season and then do a 16 playoff or an 18 playoff where, like, I saw a tweet that said, it's unfair that City wins and they didn't beat Liverpool, or, there was one other team that they hadn't gotten a win against in the season. That was a top team.
Arsenal.
So,
I
well,
don't think they. I don't think they beat Arsenal this season.
so they didn't beat second or third place and they finished top of the table. So if you want to, we can't complain about throughout the course of the season. They all play the same amount of games. They all played the exact same teams, home and away. They were the best team.
So my big thing here is that I'm not on the sort of, City bought their trophies, bought their titles and all this sort of stuff, because, Manchester United and Chelsea and these other teams, like, they've shown that spending your balls off is not enough, is not sufficient for winning trophies. So the fact that Pep and company have spent the money, which they have spent, like, let's be serious, they've spent a ton of money, but they've spent it smartly. And Pep has the managerial new to bring a team together, handle the egos, sit guys when he needs to, and keep them resting. And like, he's done this consistently over the course of the years.
Right.
Something like they deserve a lot of credit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Manchester City deserves a lot of credit. Now, how they got there, if they're, proven all these 115 charges and everything, I don't know how this goes. I really don't know how this goes. I've sort of gone back and forth. Well, they'll just give them a huge fine, but everybody knows that does absolutely nothing for a team like Manchester City in their pockets. If they take points away, that would be something. I don't see them. I don't know if the Premier League has the balls to do that, even though they've taken, points from the lessers, the lesser clubs in Nottingham Forest and Everton. So yeah, I don't know how this goes, but it does feel. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't feel good right now. Just knowing that Manchester City is so good, and you're right. Like, they win by 2 points. They beat Liverpool by like 1 point. It's like, not like they're blowing everybody out of the universe, but it's just like they've got this depth that nobody can match, and it's kind of like it has this inevitability to it where maybe there's now I'm thinking about it, maybe like Manchester City is so smart that they're so good that they know how to keep it close and yet still win, because then we can't really say, well,
you gotta
get everybody out.
You gotta get your tin hat on for that.
Just for a moment there, I put it on. I was like, well, actually, they could be good enough to do this. But like, I'm just saying this as a Spurs fan. Like, I know that we're not going to beat Manchester City unless something goes completely awry. Like, it's not going to happen. So the fact that we have that feeling, and this gets to the point of Spurs and rooting against Tottenham to win that game against, Manchester City earlier in the week, it's like, yeah, I don't really think that we're capable of winning. So like, the only thing, in fact, that I can't deal with mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, is Arsenal winning, right? If they actually pull that off, holy shit. Like, I would be hearing about that for decades.
I think there's one thing that for me is a sticking point in all this. And with these, like I said, it's a pyramid system, right? Like, the best teams are usually going to have the best chance of success. And you see things like, Villa getting in the Champions League. Like, that's incredible. That's a story that that you don't see very often. That's special and should be celebrated, because against the odds of what they spend and where people expect them to finish, they went in and got a Champions League spot. And we should give them their kudos for that. There's nothing keeping these other big teams from spending and recruiting the way that City has. I firmly believe that. There's no reason that Arsenal can't go spend similar types of money. Manchester United has spent similar types of money. And so the issue isn't the amount that they're spending or how they've gotten there. The issue is the teams that are spending a lot of money and are trying to be competitive with the likes of Manchester City. You have to do better with how you're spending your money and the players that you're bringing in, because that, for me, is the gap. The gap isn't the amount of money necessarily. The gap is how they're spending it and who they're bringing in.
And the problem is that there's some problem. There's obviously multiple problems here, but like the thing is, like, the Newcastle fans, they would say like, well, Manchester City, they were allowed to, or maybe not even allowed to, spend all this money, and then they kind of pulled the ladder up behind them, and now we can't really spend in the same way. There's probably some truth to that as well.
Yeah.
But
you know what City did? They did it anyways, and then they won, and then they're going to deal with the consequences later, whatever those consequences are going to be. And if they are found to be guilty of all these things, and I'm a believer that the Premier League should come down on them as hard as necessary. Do I think they will? Probably not. But that's
it's easier to get forgiveness than permission, and that's basically Manchester City in a nutshell. And they've done it smartly. We got to give them some credit. They've done it smartly. We'll see.
The other thing too, what was their point total this year?
Not 90 or 91, 92. What were they?
Maybe
they were 91. 91.
So they've won with a lot more points than that. It's not, like we said, it's not as though they're blowing away the competition and winning by 20 points every season. Like, teams are right there, and it's margins that they aren't succeeding past that's keeping them from beating Manchester City. If Arsenal is a point ahead of Manchester City going into the final day, then Arsenal wins, right? Like, you play every team. Every team plays the exact same teams.
It's true, but over the course of the last 15 minutes, I have now convinced myself that City is so good and so smart and so shrewd that they are essentially sandbagging and keeping them just right above where they need to be. I'm actually now convinced they actually have a plan, and they knew, where they needed to be and coming down the stretch. I actually now 100% believe that.
Maybe we're actually not giving Pep enough credit for what he's doing. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And not just him, but like the front office as well. The number crunchers, like they know that, Manchester or Arsenal is going to, like, say, lose to Aston Villa and, then run the table or whatever the hell they did. They just knew. And so they got the smartest people. They got the friggin' most people, the most players. I don't know. I'm running out of.
You're a Spurs fan. You should be happy right now.
I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm relieved.
Yeah.
And yes, I am absolutely relieved. So quickly, the talking points quickly. Liverpool. We get Klopp. Klopp is officially gone. I'm kind of sad about it because I just sort of like the guy, and he's obviously a great manager and all that. But he just seems like a cool guy. He always had some fun, discussions, and like his interviews are always interesting. Even when he was in a bad mood, and he was whining about schedules and all this sort of stuff. It was always interesting. It was always compelling, and he always did actually seem like kind of a smart guy. What's your feeling about sort of the post Klopp era, number one? And then the second question, is Klopp a Premier League legend? Somebody actually asked me that on Instagram, and I was like, well, that's a good question. He won one Premier League. He won an FA Cup, I believe. He won a Champions League. And then he also had to deal with an absolute, animal beast in Manchester City. So is he a Premier League legend?
He's most definitely a Liverpool legend. I don't think that is really up for debate. I think that he's one of the better managers that Liverpool's ever had. If we go back to the beginning of when he got the job, Liverpool was in a bit of a rut. Right, they went.
You were fighting with Spurs for like fourth and fifth. Like that's
exactly that. Like definitely a few years where they weren't in Champions League. To say he's a Premier League legend, there's so many of them in the history of the league that it's a deeper discussion than we really can talk about in 5 or 10 minutes. I think there's so much that goes into it. He's definitely a Liverpool legend. I firmly believe that. And like you said, he's had to deal with an absolute buzzsaw in Manchester City that's just kind of rolled through the competition since he's been in the league. And so he brought Liverpool back to a place where Liverpool has always seemed to have been. And he did win some pretty impressive trophies. Not many when's the last time ex-manager won a Champions League with another big club? You know what I mean? Like,
I thought you were about to go to Tottenham on that one.
No.
Last time we've won anything.
When's the last time Manchester United won a Champions League? Right? Like, it's not as though they're knocking down the door every year. They're really challenging for it. And so for the big teams that have been in such turmoil over the last 4 or 5 years. I think that Klopp has a lot to do with that, as much as Pep in some ways, where these teams are viciously trying to keep up with City and Liverpool and Spurs as of late, that they've kind of gotten themselves into these circles that have been really negative.
So what's your looking forward now? Arne Slot, whatever you want to, however it's pronounced. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you just not sure? What's your sort of feelings on Liverpool moving forward?
I'll be the first one to tell you I haven't watched many Feyenoord games this season, and so I don't know his managerial style. I don't really know much about his track record. I'm what we call a casual when it comes to the Premier League and all that stuff. I enjoy watching. I'm not a huge deep follower.
You're not checking Feyenoord's YouTube
no,
highlights and
no.
tactical
I'm not looking for
analysis.
Arne Slot's best tactical games performances. And so I'm really not sure. There's obviously a buffer period of I'm sure there'll be some player turnover if his style differentiates from that of Klopp's, if the types of players he likes is different. I'm sure that there are definitely some nuances there that will have to get ironed out. So I think it's really important when you get a new coach that you give him time, time enough, at least 2 windows to get the right players in that he wants to have in his group. And then after that, you kind of start to judge them on their performances and how the results go.
That's fair. Let's see. We'll run through some of these a little quicker here. But I have to get some thoughts in on Spurs because there's been so much talk over the last week about, the loser mentality and, the Ange sort of kind of having a go, perhaps if depending on how you take his words, having a go at, fans, maybe, in the club and personnel and all this stuff. I think what it laid bare for me is that everybody, like when you talk about Spurs or you talk about Liverpool, you talk about United, Chelsea, City, all these things, it's not a monolith. There's a lot of different sort of stakeholders that come together for a club. And Ange and the players have, they have a job to do. They are committed to that and they're committed to Tottenham, but they're committed to Tottenham in a different way than fans are, right? I mean, they're getting paid to play or manage a club or for a club or manage a club. And there's a chance that they could get fired in 2 weeks or in 2 years or whenever. So their commitment to the club is a little more self-centered. And I don't mean that in I don't mean that they're a selfish person or anything like that, but it's just they need to do well to continue, to continue working for this club. Whereas fans, we have a different perspective on that. Like we want what's best for the club and ourselves, but it's different what can be good for us and what can be good for, say, Ange, right? And so what I'm basically getting at here is the fact that people are like, Ange doesn't understand rivalries or this sort of thing. Like that's bullshit. He coached at Celtic, right? He knows that he knows everything about rivalries and derbies and all this sort of hatred and animosity and all that. But at the end of the day, he has a job to do, and that is for Tottenham to play well and to win. Like fans, we don't necessarily have that same sort of focus in whatever. So this game, it was sort of a unique, remarkable situation, talking about the Manchester City Tottenham game. Of course, Ange just got to go into that game being like, of course we're going to win. We're going to, try to win, and the players have to be the same exact way. Fans, we don't we just have a different end goal, an end game in mind. And that is, listen, if we won that game and basically handed Arsenal the title, which as it would have gone, they would have won the title, we would have heard about that. We being fans would have had to hear about that from Arsenal fans for decades, for generations, probably till the end of days, until I was dead. I would be hearing about Spurs winning, helping win the league for Arsenal. Like that, I don't need that in my life. I do not need that in my life. And the fact that like people can't understand that like Ange has, his motivations, fans have their motivations. I didn't particularly like Ange's post game uh presser when he was kind of having a go at maybe people within the organization, kind of maybe some fans as well. I mean, like I do understand him getting on a fan that was behind him in the stadium saying, either I don't know if he was saying, lose the game. The fan was saying lose the game, or the fan was cheering when City scored. I don't know the precise situation, but I totally understand Ange being mad at that guy because that guy's a douchebag, and that's beyond the pale. But fans in my position to be okay, if not rooting for quietly rooting for Tottenham to lose that game, totally understandable. It's not a loser mentality. This is not going to have fans quietly like being happy that we lost to Manchester City is not going to like have some sort of impact on our ability to compete next season for anything, trophies in Europa, in whatever. It has absolutely no bearing on that. It just has a bearing on whether I have to listen to Arsenal fans yap for the next however many years about us helping them win the league. That's the only thing that it has an impact on. So I was like, listen, this whole narrative about like Ange and fans sort of splitting and like fans maybe being done with Ange, that's bullshit. Ange is a great coach. I can't wait to see what he does over the summer. I can't wait to see how we continue this sort of, campaign or project that he's on. Like I'm excited for the Ange era at Spurs. And this whole narrative that blew up on Twitter, and I got so many tweets from even people who said that they weren't Arsenal fans, being like, I just want to understand your mentality and sort of what your thoughts. Shut the fuck up. If you put yourself in my fucking shoes and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like it's just like you're either trolling or you're a dumbass if you don't understand sort of where Spurs fans are coming from on this. And the whole narrative about like there being some sort of rift, no, it's Ange is smart enough that he will be able to put himself in the shoes of fans and be like, okay, I can totally understand that. At the time, he was probably just really mad and really frustrated that they lost and they didn't win. And he had, douchebags in the stands behind him rooting for City. Like, I get it. I get everything about it, but like this whole like there's some sort of bigger things going on. Bullshit. Number two, this thing where City is just too good. They're too damn good. That's part of the problem here. That's like Tottenham fans. Like we know that we're probably not going to win anything next season. We're not there yet. So like we're fine rooting for City to win the title because it means that Arsenal doesn't win it. I don't know. That I'll get off my soapbox now.
I have two quick things about that situation in general. Because I think that's. Did you see the balloons?
I did see the balloons. Happy birthday.
Thank you. For me, that's the issue with the way that world football is set up. The typical World Football League is set up is you rely on other teams to win the championship, right? Like you're relying on other teams' results when you're not in the first position, right? And I don't know if maybe that's a good thing. Like we've talked about multiple times just in this episode, everyone plays every team in the same way. And so should that be enough for you to decide who the best team is? I guess it should be, but you're relying on other teams to help you win a championship or to keep you, like Tottenham fans shouldn't have to say, well, I'm glad that we lost because at least Arsenal doesn't win now, right? Like it should be, man, Arsenal and City are playing for the title today. I really want City to win, right? Like we shouldn't have to talk weeks behind about how, well, if Tottenham had beaten City and then Arsenal fans would be able to, be Tottenham's fans' fathers for the next 2 decades. Like for me, that's kind of an issue with the whole thing. And the second thing on it is it's true. Coaches and players and executives, they have a different responsibility than fans do, right? And as players, we're wired that we want to win every game, no matter what the consequences are for the rest of it, right?
You
Like,
have to be.
there are guys on Tottenham that played in that game where their performance in that game could be the difference between them having a contract with the team next year or not having a contract with the team next year.
Yep.
And so the truth is that we don't feel the same feelings when it comes to rivalries, when it comes to the hatred, unless, of course, you grew up at your boyhood club and you were a fan before you were a player. That's just not something you try and feel it, and you feel the energy when you're, if you go to a North London derby and you're in the stadium and you're playing in that game, you feel that hatred just because of the reaction of the fans and the lead up to the game and all that. But it's not something that you go home at night and you say, that hurts so much more or exponentially more than any other loss, or it feels so much better, exponentially better than every other win, because you're out there to play and win a game every single time you step over the line. So we're never going to feel those same types of feelings. Like, we play Red Bull. I don't like Red Bull, but I've never really liked Red Bull. I feel that there's a rivalry there, but I don't live in the passion of that rivalry like fans do, because it's who they are as fans, right? And who we are as players is we go out to win every single game.
Yep.
I hope that gives some clarity on, I also think that he's a good coach. He should want to win every game. He doesn't have to deal with Arsenal saying to Tottenham for the next 2 decades, thanks for the league, right?
Exactly.
He's fighting for a job.
He doesn't have to worry about that. And players don't either. Although one player, I will give a shout out to Toney, because he's not playing for a contract, and he's, he's pretty well, solidified, going to be in the starting lineup to come next season. Mm-hmm. I don't think that he tried to not score that breakaway, but just shout out to my guy Toney. Just thank you. Love you guys.
It's also crazy for people to even insinuate that he did it on purpose, right? Arsenal fans to say he missed on purpose. So come on now.
There's no chance. There's no chance.
And if you firmly believe that, you need a big time reality check.
I do love the narrative. I've hated most of the narratives. I do like that narrative. I'll support that one. I told you, listen, every time Bono comes on here, I'm like, listen, I'm going to keep it shorter. We're going longer than ever on this one. So I'm going to sort of quicken things up. I got some fun questions that we're not going to get to, including Chelsea versus United. Who's going to finish better next season? We'll get to this at a later date. I will give a quick shout out though to the FPL winners for the season. So Stephen Riding, Blink One Eto, like Blink 182,
like Samuel.
Yes, Samuel Eto. And my pronunciation obviously not great, Cameroonian. Anyway, Stephen Riding, he is the champion, coming out on top with 2,589 points. I won't even tell you how many more than me that is. That's probably like twice as many. But shout out to Stephen for taking it down. He came out, he almost got caught by Tim Klein, Major League Soccer, who only finished 9 points behind him and scored 20 more points in the final week. So he was right on his butt. Mo Salah, no problem, 7.0. Ryan Nowland, he's actually been near the top of the leaderboard, which I think most of these guys have been all season. So he came in third. So shout out to Stevens, Tim, Ryan, a bunch of other guys, Will Weghurst, Mitchell Dunai, and Connor Lind. Like, you guys are all incredibly good at FPL, and I am freaking terrible. So I just will give you a quick little round of applause on that one. Well done to Steven for taking it down. And I think we give out some prizes. I don't know if like merch, or maybe if you want to come on the podcast. I don't know. I'll try and reach out to you. Although I don't have your email address. So if you can see this, hit me up on Instagram or email me, and we'll get after it. Let's go to around the world quickly. So MLS, we have an MLS stalwart here, so it's the perfect time to get some questions answered here. Let's start out with who are the top 3 teams in MLS right now? Power rankings.
Yeah, I think one has to be Miami. Just the way that they've, Messi hasn't played in every game. And I think they've only lost 2 so far this season. And MLS is a league where anything can happen on any given Saturday. So I think they have to be number 1 just based on the results they've gotten and their standing at the table, obviously. I think too right now, a shock to a lot of people is Real Salt Lake is on fire. I mean, they look to be unbeatable right now. Just the Chito Arango's been scoring like it's no one's business. And so I think that they're two right now. They're on the top of the Western Conference standings, and they have been red hot over the last few weeks. Everyone thought that Galaxy was going to kind of be one of the teams that emerged as one of the best in the West, and they were quickly overtaken by Salt Lake. Honorable mention, I think Minnesota is also pretty red hot right now. They've been playing some really good football. So shout out to them. We play them later in the season, so I'm looking forward. My first trip to Minnesota to play in their newish stadium. So looking forward to that.
Looks nice.
It's supposed to be an incredible atmosphere.
It does look and sound quite nice on the socials. You're going to say something about Miami. So you have them up top now. Did you have question marks about them longer term? Is that what you were going to say?
I don't have question marks about them. I think that part of the way that the league is right now is the league really wants Miami to succeed. And they are a good team with some of the best players that, the game has ever seen. But there is an element of, if they don't win, who is it going to be? Right. And what's it going to take for a team to get over the hump and beat them? And I guess that's what playoffs are for. Anything can happen in them most playoffs, as we've seen in the past. But right now, it just almost seems like the league is catered to them in a way, to really give them the opportunity to be the top dogs, and credit to them. They players have to go play and win games. So, but yeah, it's
not surprising, right? This is
anything
not
like that.
Yeah, no, this isn't surprising.
When you watch their games, you kind of wonder sometimes if some other teams or some other players would get the same calls and the same type of treatment, right? So I'm not going to speak on that. I know that the league is listening, and
they know how to work refs.
I don't want to catch any heat here, but they know how to work the guys in the stripes.
They do. They've got many years of it. And listen, referees are human. And you got Messi and Suarez and Alba, sort of, and Busquets, like, sort of right in your face.
Just like players are excited to play against them, and some might feel a bit of intimidation when you're playing against them. Referees feel the same way, right? Like these referees are fans of the game too. They live the game just like players do. And it's guys that they've been watching for a long time. So,
yep.
It's what natural. It is.
It's natural.
It is what it is.
And it's not surprising. It's just sort of we'll see how. I actually have some question marks about them longer term. I know that Tata Martino is part of his job is trying to keep them healthy.
Mm-hmm. They're not the deepest team. They're not the deepest team.
And they're not the youngest team either.
They're not the youngest team. It's a long season. I mean, there's some long travel and some schedule congestion. Obviously, we saw how that team fared post Leagues Cup last year. They found it really difficult to kind of they won Leagues Cup and they went on this long run, and then you have to jump straight back into league play, and it's difficult. You feel like you just went and won a trophy, and now you have to hop back in and go back to your Saturday, at Salt Lake and home against Orlando, and it's not as easy as people on the outside might think it is.
Yeah. We'll probably have you back around the Leagues Cup time. We'll hopefully listen. You're always welcome, by the way. You can come anytime you want. But we'll talk about Miami again at some point and see where they're at. Now, quickly, DC. You guys have had you've had some tough. It's going to be different this year. What's different? What is different about DC? You're on the right side of the playoff line right now. It just sort of feels like you got Benteke rolling. What's different about the DC United this season?
Yeah, Christian Benteke is obviously a big part of what we do in our style of play, and he's been incredible so far for us. And who knows where we'd be without him? But I know that's what everyone sees. Everyone sees Christian Benteke scoring 2 hat tricks so far this year, and But we're a team with a lot of grit and a lot of intensity. I think the fresh blood in the front office and the coaching staff has really brought that intensity to our locker room. We brought in, the moves we made in the offseason were really smart moves, guys that contribute for us game in and game out, and are big players for us that we brought in. And so it really speaks to the quick turnover that we've had. I think we've been in winning positions in almost all of the games that we've played in, and we haven't found a way to close them out. So obviously that's something that we're focused on in our growth as a group. But it's exciting. We play a really exciting style of soccer. It's high energy, high intensity, a lot of pressing, the counterattacks, a lot of scoring. And so it's really exciting. I'm really excited to see the direction that we go and how far we can take this. We're 4 months into an entire new reign, an entire new group of people that are trying to bring DC United back to where it once was. And I really think that we took a big step in heading in that direction. So it's a fun club to be a part of right now, and it's definitely exciting.
I get more questions here, but I'm gonna kind of speed things up. All right, we're gonna move things along a little bit here. So we're gonna go straight to the other things around the world. I'm not gonna sort of twist your arm and get the lowdown on Toronto FC and NYCFC, that kerfuffle and the drama, because I know you got ties to Toronto, but at the same time, they're probably not going to give you all the dirt because you're not there anymore. At some point,
they don't. They don't. I've definitely got some friends that still play there, and they're pretty tight-lipped about what went on. And as every scuffle and skirmish is, no matter what the scuffle or skirmish is, there's always an alleged action that leads to a reaction, and who knows if that alleged action happened or not, and guys start to lose their head and it gets out of control. So, we've all seen the reports of what happened. I don't know much more than what the reports are. So, I think it's good to get that kind of, maybe not to the extent that they did it, but that little bit of bad blood, that little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. 100%. I think that really kind of, one, shows fans of both those teams that there's a lot of passion in what they're doing. Guys really care. And guys are really, really competitive. People forget just how competitive and how frustrated people can get when they're playing sports. And it's a big part of what drives people to do what we do.
That's the kind of juicy narrative that fans can always get behind too.
For sure.
And MLS needs as many of those as we can get. So let's get some more locker room or tunnel scuffles so we can get whether they actually happen or not. Let's just sort of at least put some thoughts, some narratives out there that the fights are actually happening.
I do enjoy a little bit of a mix up, a little bit of an exchange of pleasantries, if you will. But coming to blows, I'm never a fan of that, just because guys do things they regret, and it hurts the team at the end of the day. So I do like a little bit of an elevated heart rate, a little bit of a nice little conversation. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, let's soccer fights are 99% of the time. That's what it is. Yeah. Just like hold me back, bro. A lot of hold me back bros out there with the soccer fights.
That's right.
Rest around the world quickly. U.S. men's national team talk. So they being Greg dropped the roster for the pre-Copa America friendlies. They're taking place next month against Colombia, and that is on June 8th, and then Brazil, June 12th. So 2 teams that will be playing in Copa America, not in our group, obviously. So they dropped the 27-man roster for those pre-Copa friendlies. And, not a lot of surprises, really. There's a few talking points that I'll go over real quick. I mean, on the goalies, we had Sean Johnson. I think a lot of people were maybe thinking they'd go a little bit younger. Our guy Drake Callender has been on the roster recently. Zach Steffen, not that long ago, was penciled in as GK1 according to a lot of people. A lot of other people. I don't know if you guys have heard of Alex Bono. very good keeper, should be on that list, obviously. There's a lot of and younger guys. In fact, Chris Brady here in Chicago. Gaga is another name that comes to mind. Schulte in Columbus. There's a lot of guys that like could have been in that third spot behind Turner and Horvath. And I think people are a little surprised by that. I think that a lot of those younger names are probably in the mix for the Olympics. So we got to keep that in mind. But yeah, I think that was a surprise to see Sean Johnson. Defense, I know Shaq Moore was the guy that everybody on Twitter was getting on. Like, how is Shaq Moore still here? You know, I don't know how many other options we had. I don't know if DeJuan Jones is healthy. I'm not sure he is at this point. We have, listen, Weah can play there. I don't know if we'll see that or not, but he's been playing there for Juventus. You got Scally can obviously fill in there. I think a lot of people were thinking maybe Yedlin was going to get that spot anyway. So that was talking point. Austin Trusty not making it, another talking point. He's been playing, I think, relatively well for obviously a not great Sheffield United team in the Premier League. But listen, if you're playing the Premier League, you are playing at a certain level. Midfield, Timothy Tillman was one a lot of people were a little surprised by. You know, guys like Leonard Maloney, who's been playing awesome in the Bundesliga this season for a team. I think Heidenheim finished 8th in the Bundesliga, and he was playing a lot of minutes for them. I think a lot of people were hoping to see Leonard Maloney. A lot of U23s that could have been there. Tanner Tessman, another Sam Fam guy, Busio, McGlynn, Luna, Gutierrez here in Chicago. These guys are all in sort of the U23 mix. So again, they could be on the Olympic squad. We don't exactly know what the situation is there. And then finally, up top at forward, I think there are 4 strikers in this 27-man team, which is a lot. A good problem to have, I would suggest. And we'll see if they all make the 26-man roster, which has to come out in mid-June. But yeah, those were the big talking points. I know you probably actually haven't even seen the roster at this point, but any thoughts, reactions for you?
I think I have seen it. When it comes to the goalkeepers, I'm a firm that listen. I think Matt is a fantastic goalkeeper. I've said that numerous times on this program. I think the most important thing for goalkeepers, no matter what age you are, no matter what level you're at, is that you need to be playing. And Matt needs to be playing for himself, for his growth as a player. Because I do think he's a fantastic goalkeeper. I think that Ethan Horvath's a fantastic goalkeeper, and he went on loan and he was playing, right? Like you need to be playing real minutes, whatever level it is, right? If Matt can go anywhere as long as he's playing, and I'm sure that he'll succeed, and he'll be a guy that is you can count on with the U.S. men's national team. But we've seen it before when Zach was in there and he was at City and he wasn't playing that much. You lose that bit of game touch that you need as a goalkeeper so desperately. That rhythm, that seeing the flight of the ball, the situations in games that you just can't replicate in training. And I think it's so important for goalkeepers to be playing. And Matt's a smart guy. He'll know that, right? He knows that he wants to play and he needs to play. And I'm sure that he'll find a situation that's best for himself. But I just think from a goalkeeper perspective, when it comes to national team and you're only playing a few games, they can't be the only games or the majority of the games that you're playing, you know? And we've come into this situation a few times in the last few years with goalkeepers that, like I said, I'm sure that Matt will sort out his situation and be at a place where he can thrive. And that's my hope for him.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be, you know, you listen, you know way more about this than me, especially, but most people, I'm hoping that like at least he'll be, you know, the Matt Turner that we know and love, you know, coming off of a season where he obviously didn't play as much as we wanted him to. But hopefully, you know, at least for now, you can sort of just be that guy, and then, you know, next season, wherever it is, hopefully, you know, he makes the most of it and goes on. I'm like, I'm not, for some reason, I'm not worried about him. I feel like, you know, I know he hasn't been getting that many touches and everything. I bet you he's going to come in. He seems like a machine. Like he's going to get out there and just sort of be his normal self. Although I hear you when you're sort of saying, you know, you can't replicate game situations and sort of that edge you got to have.
For sure. The focus, the that you need for the entire time, right? Just the
Especially
little
goalkeeper,
things
where you're sitting around
right.
most of the
You
time.
get away with a lot of things in training that you can't get away with in games, right? And it's the real thing, and you can't replicate the pressures and the situations that come with that.
Yeah.
I think for the rest of the roster, like with anything, there's always going to be snubs and guys that people think shouldn't have made it, and guys that they feel bad that were left off. That's a part of the national team, and it's a good problem for countries to have, quite honestly. And so, you know, like I said, I'm a fan. I'll be watching, making sure that we're holding it down.
That's right. Like I said, June 8th, Colombia, June 12th, Brazil, and then, of course, Copa America not long after that. So strap in, buckle in. We will obviously be talking about that in the weeks to come. Other last around the world championship preview. So shout out to Leeds, who is, the Sam fam. We're on board trying to get Larry and TJ's team back in the Premier League. We would love to see that. Leeds just dominated Norwich in the second leg of the semifinal. So they moved on to the, what do they call it? The richest game in world. I'll call it world soccer. They would say world football. They will be playing Southampton, who similarly dispensed with West Brom in the other semifinal. So Leeds versus Southampton on Sunday morning. Big game, usually kind of a boring one. We'll see if it's like that, because both these teams actually like to get after it. So it should be a fun game. I'm 100% on board with Leeds. I hope they pull that out. But yeah, everybody should be tuning in. We still got some, I know the season's done. We still got some big games. We got, Europa final. We got this championship playoff. We also have the Champions League final. So there's still games to keep us in focused for the next.
We have an ex-Leeds guy in our locker room, so I'm on board with the Sam fam as well. So
there we go.
Would love to see them go.
See, we're all rowing. We're all in the boat, rowing in the same direction here.
That's right. I think that's one of the most fun leagues in the world. So
it's got to be the hardest
league to get out of. The stories that I hear about the championship, it sounds like such a grind, but it sounds like so much fun. And as like a fan watching, it is such a fun league to watch, just because of the intensity and kind of the more parody of it.
Oh, exactly. Right. There's no Manchester Cities.
No, there's not. If there were, then they'd be up all the time.
Right. They would be Manchester City.
That's right.
Exactly. The championship they will never beat a Manchester City.
That's right.
That's what's great about promotion and relegation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stoppage time. Let's finish this episode on a high. I will start off by being another mea culpa. So I had been doing very well in the Ivan Toney's best bets, overtrained, five-a-side. I've been killing it for many weeks. And then the last 2 weeks, I have shit the bed. I am sorry. It is all on me. 2 and 3 last week, not great. Obviously, hopefully nobody went bankrupt over that. But here's the thing: we're going to bounce right back. Okay, I've done extra research. I put a little extra, sprinkled magic dust on these picks. I feel really good, really good about these picks. Overtrained, five-a-side, Wednesday through Sunday, one a day. Here we go. So on Wednesday, we're going back to Norway. Not just the top division, we're going to the second tier in the first division. So Egersund and Stavanger in Norway. Easy over. Love that one. Thursday, we got the Bundesliga playoffs going on. We got Bochum and Dusseldorf. So Dusseldorf is traveling to Bochum. Bochum, is the Bundesliga team that is trying to hold on and keep their spot. I know that Bochum is going to be sort of at their home spot. They're going to try and score a bunch of goals. Dusseldorf scores a bunch of goals, period. So I like that game to go over on Thursday, even though it's the first leg. I like that to go over. Friday, we're going back to Sweden, where I've actually been doing quite well lately. Elfsborg and Halmstads. Listen, we got to dig a little deeper here. Okay, we don't have a lot of Premier League and all Champions League, all this stuff. We got to dig a little deeper. We're going to the Allsvenskan, Elfsborg and Halmstads on Friday. Saturday, going to MLS, actually. Portland, who have been just a wet dream for overbettors lately. Portland, and they're hosting Sporting Kansas City. I love that game to go over. Love that game. And then finally, we'll finish up in Luxembourg. Luxembourg on Sunday. Yes, I couldn't pull the trigger on the championship playoff. I just couldn't. Those two
No,
teams could score a bunch of, but like that game is so much pressure
that's
and all
too
that
big.
stuff. Yeah, I couldn't go with that one. We're gonna
Mhm.
go to Luxembourg in the top tier, where Racing FC Union is gonna face off against Mondorf Leban. And I definitely
Mm,
mispronounced that, but Racing
mm.
FC Union and Mondorf Leban on Sunday in Luxembourg. So there you go. There's your five-a-side overtrained. We're gonna get back on the tracks. We're gonna get headed in the right direction. I feel it. I feel good about it. Now, you got any bet that you like? You can always pass. I don't know what the betting authorities, whether they got their eye on you or what.
I listen. I think that there's been a lot of goals scored in MLS this year, which I am
Love it.
certainly not a fan of. But I can
Good point.
imagine if you were an MLS better that overs would have been a dream for you this year. So, um, yeah, I'm not going to place a bet. I'm not going to make any remarks on bets here, but there's been a lot of goals in MLS this year. Watch it if you're not, if you're not watching MLS, watch it.
Got it. It's like a
Win.
natural transition from EPL, where there were
Yeah,
a ton of goals this season as well,
that's
right
right.
into MLS.
And
A lot of
like
goals.
tail Sam's overs,
Always.
get on the over train, win your $100, and then use it to buy MLS season pass. So you basically get to watch MLS for free all season.
Boom.
And then
Easy.
your summer's not boring and lacking soccer.
It's true. It's true. We got about a month of Copa America and the Euros overlapping,
Yep.
which are going to be incredible, by the way.
Yes.
But after that, we are going to be, listen, you got to get on board with MLS. It's
That's right.
just MLS and who else plays? I think Norway plays and Sweden plays and all
There you go.
these
You can watch
teams.
Scandinavia, or you can watch, come
There you
into
go.
a city near you.
There you go. Japan and Korea, I believe, are still on our schedule.
Right.
Japan's going to Europe in a couple of years, but for
They're on our
right now,
season schedule, but not our sleep schedule. So those will be tough to follow.
they're great though if you have a problem like me and you just
Yeah.
set your phone for goals and then you get woken
Right.
up by the goals. Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that. Terrible for your sleep patterns, but whatever.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. Don't worry about that. GOAWs time. Finish up strong. You are the guest here. Do you want to go first? You got any GOAWs for us?
I got to think about this one. I mean, we did just play a goat this week, so he's a top contender. Even though we did, keep him pretty quiet.
You did actually.
So, no, I'm gonna say close to home. There's a new women's league coming into the fold. It's a USL league that DC United has a team in. So my GOA is the people that have created this new women's league that is planning to rival NWSL and DC United for buying in and having a team and making the investment in the women's game in the DMV area. So I think it's great what they're doing. I think the women's game has so much room to grow, and there's such a market for it. And so my GOA is the USL and DC United for making it happen.
Good shout. Good shout. I wonder if they're going to have some sort of US Open Cup, so then like the Washington Spirit would play like the USL team. That would be kind of cool.
I would assume that the NWSL, depending on how competitive it would be, would either really welcome that or really shy away from that. Right? Like it's their show right now, and obviously teams are just trying to catch a piece of it.
It'll be interesting to see because the USL.
Fun,
what are they calling this? They call it the Super League or something like the
Super League, USL Super League,
something like that. And they're on equal footing. They got D1 status with NWSL, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Okay, good shout for the GOA. I got a couple honorable mentions. I'm gonna give one to the Dutch referee who was banned for life after celebrating a win in some lower level league in the Netherlands. He handed out like 4 red cards to like the other team, to the losing team, and then went and celebrated the win with the winners. Obviously, I don't know if that guy has like a wish to be fired or whatever, but like that's just, that's just asking for problems. Shout out to the Everton fan who somehow spread the word around Emirates that West Ham had drawn level at 2-2. And you saw all those Arsenal fans who were like, going like 2-2. I was like, that was amazing. Well done, sir, or ma'am, whoever did that. And then my actual go goes to Marcelo Gallardo. So he is the coach of El Ittihad in Saudi Arabia. He was fired last week, and yet he's still coaching the team this week because he's like in some sort of extended negotiations with the club about like his essentially his golden parachute. So like he's still coaching. He was fired and he's still coaching the team. It's like, you know, one of those marriages where you like you get divorced, but you're still living in the same house
Yeah.
together, and that
Yeah.
like weird situation.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Marcelo Gallardo. I don't know how you pulled that off. I hope you get your massive golden parachute from the Saudi league. But that is just a weird situation. So shout
Listen,
out.
it's chaos over there. We were there in preseason. It's chaos. So honestly, the fact that they didn't deport him from the country right away is a pretty hot start for him. So it's always fun to hear news coming out of the Saudi league.
So it's just crazy. It's funny. It's like it's funny money, and it sort of doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
The whole thing about it, it's a very strange situation that obviously a few years from now somebody will do some sort of, you know, documentary on that'll be one of the top 30 for 30s, at least in the soccer world, if they pull that off. But shout out Marcelo Gallardo. And there we go. Putting a bow on this episode, putting a bow on the 23-24 EPL season. Obviously, we still have, you know, Champions League and Europa finals and Europa Conference League finals. And then we got Copa America and the Euros and everything. And it never stops. Soccer never stops. Soccer never sleeps. But Bono, thank you for hopping on here. It's always great to have you. You always have a seat at the table, an open mic. Anytime you got a few minutes by now, I say that after an hour and a half. I was like, listen, I'm going to keep this one shorter. I swear to God.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it. And then like an hour and a half later, it's just.
It's gotten to the point where you say it and it just kind of goes in one ear out the other. And I block off 2
I
hours
know everybody. And it's same thing with everybody when I say it's just a joke. I've become a joke. I'm a joke at this point.
No, we didn't say that.
You did. I said it, and I believe it. But no, thank you for hopping on. As always, it's great to have you. And everybody else, thank you. Thank you for listening all this season. And we'll be back bigger, better, faster, stronger next week. See you guys then.